my life has been very well influenced by an icon of this church. Many of you remember him, and for those who never knew him, you missed something. You really missed something. A lot of times people want to separate God out from war. And you can't. You cannot. There is no way you can take God out of war. Why would Robert E. Lee not wait on his reconnaissance from General Jeb Stuart before he made the attack at Gettysburg, when he had always used reconnaissance? And that was the turning point of the Civil War. God kept our country together. Why would Admiral Nagumo in the Battle of Midway stop arming his planes to change from a land-based attack to a sea-based attack at the precise moment that the dive bombers from the American carriers showed up? We just cannot get away, and history's full of all stuff like that. But God also influences the individuals in war. For you, those of you who don't know, I'll go a little bit over my association with Uncle Dreyfus. My father died when I was 11 months old. I never knew my father. And from that tragedy, three of the biggest father figures in my life arose. One of them was Z.T. Barker, my grandfather. The other one was Uncle Andy, Aunt Jules' husband. And the third one was Dreyfus Lewis, who was my great uncle. He was married to my grandmother's sister, Wilma Lewis, or Wilma Hickson when they got married. Christy asked me quite a little while ago to talk about him. We decided today would be a good day because of its proximity to Memorial Day and Dreyfus's place as a veteran of our community. Uncle Dreyfus is my personal hero. He's probably the biggest hero in the sense of the word that everybody believes in heroes that I have. And I was lucky. I got to know him for most of my life. Dreyfus was raised right here in the valley. I mean, he was in the 20s and 30s, which was a tough time for a kid. And Dreyfus will tell you, if he talks about his childhood, he was a wild child. Uncle Dreyfus was rambunctious. He liked to drink liquor. He run all over the place. I don't know if he had cars to run around in back then, but they run around a lot in different ways. During his rambunctious time, he met a lady by the name of Wilma Hickson, who was born and raised right up the road, right by where Jean and Sharon is now. Aunt Wilma was the daughter of Will and Bertha Hickson. And Will did not like Dreyfus Lewis at all. In fact, he forbid them from getting married for quite a while, and to the fact that Wilma and Dreyfus had to run off and get married in 1940. Of course, the shadow of war was looming big in November of 1940 when they got married, and they run away and eloped. And shortly thereafter, or maybe even before, I'm not sure about that particular point, Dreyfus received his draft notification. Dreyfus was drafted into the United States Army. He was sent to Texas, and Uncle Dreyfus will tell you, or would tell you if he was still with us, that he was not a perfect soldier. Him and his first sergeant did not get along. In fact, it was so bad that Dreyfus was transferred out of his first unit into the 90th Infantry Division, which had the nickname of the Tough Hombres. It was the Texas and Oklahoma Infantry Division mainly. And in 1944, they deployed to Europe, and he was in England for a short time, and during the D-Day invasion, he and the members of he was either in the 357th or 358th Regiment They were part of Combat Team 9 with the 90th Infantry Division. They boarded a ship called the Susan B. Anthony. The Susan B. Anthony had the distinct privilege of being the only troop ship in the D-Day invasion to be sunk. Uncle Dreyfus woke up from a deep sleep, he said, being slammed to the roof of the berth he was in, and he proceeded to deck, and all he had with him when he got up on deck was a rifle and the clothes on his back. The Susan B. Anthony was a successful rescue by the Coast Guard. Nobody drowned from that incident. Although the people that were on that ship, I'm sure some of them did not see sunset that evening, because many of them went to the beach. When Uncle Dreyfus got up on deck and they were transferring over to a Coast Guard cutter that had come to the side, this not-so-perfect soldier, this wild child from Sequatchie County, Tennessee, is standing there, and he said he could see the ships banging together, the rescue ship and other ship. And they had placed a board between the two ships for the soldiers to go across. Dreyfus was terrified of that board. He knew if he stepped on that board that he would fall between those ships and he would be mashed by the two ships slamming together. Now, Dreyfus was raised in this area, so he's raised around churches, so it may not have been the first time he prayed, but it might have been the most sincere prayer he ever said. Dreyfus prayed to the Lord standing on that desk, and he said, "If you get me out of this, I will follow you forever." He did not do the board, he jumped between the two ships. With nothing but a rifle, he was deposited on Utah Beach the day after the D-Day invasion in order to outfit himself for combat. He had to take the equipment from dead soldiers. That bothered him his entire life. He never talked about it until, I'll tell you when he told us about it, told me wrong about it. So that's when God showed up and helped Dreyfus. About 6 or 7 days later, Combat Team 9 was engaged in combat in the hedgerow country. Uncle Dreyfus found himself in a foxhole. He was in a foxhole with one of his sergeants, or it might have been a corporal, somebody of superior rank to him than another guy. And he was instructed to take some information to the command post for that company. He did not want to go. And he implied, although I don't think he ever told me for sure, that maybe a little argument ensued and he was ordered. Anyway, eventually he got out. He got out of the foxhole, stood up to go do what he was told to do, and a mortar round, God showed up again, a mortar round landed inside the foxhole, killing everybody in it. Knocked Dreyfus Lewis to the ground. Dreyfus got up to run for cover, took one step and fell again. He looked down at his leg, and I can't remember if it's a right or left now that I'm getting over, I guess. But he looked down at his leg, and his leg was hanging on by flesh alone. The bone was gone. He was evacuated eventually to England, and then sent to a hospital, I believe in Texas, where they said. They were able to save his leg, but his leg was 2 inches, I believe it was 2 inches shorter than the other leg. So he had to wear special shoes for the rest of his life. And a lot of people that knew Dreyfus for their entire life never realized he had a shorter leg because of the shoes. You know, his gait was pretty good. When he got tired, he would limp. He also, the wound never healed. I can remember as a young man spending the night with him having to change the dressings on that wound. It drained until 2008 when he passed away. The one thing I forgot to say was when he asked God to help him get across to that other ship, he said he distinctly heard an answer saying, "You'll be home by Christmas." Christmas of 1944, Dreyfus Lewis was home. He was in a cast from his hip to his foot, and he was only home on leave. He had to go back to the hospital. He spent, I believe Aunt Wilma told me, 3 years in the hospital as part of the military. He had all kinds of stories about German prisoners that he played cards with and all kinds of stuff. So the gist of that is, Uncle Dreyfus didn't remember the promise he gave to God. He came back, started drinking. He wasn't a terrible person, but he had a party lifestyle. Shortly after, I don't know exactly what year it was, but Dreyfus laid down on the couch one night, basically passing out drunk. He went to sleep, and he woke up. Now, I apologize. I get choked up when I talk about this. He woke up, he was standing in a line. And that line stretched to a pit. And the people at the end of that line were stepping off into the pit. And he said, William, it was as real as me and you are sitting here in this living room. He said, I know what brimstone smells like. He says, I know what the flames of hell feel like. He said, I was in a line, I could not back up, I could not step out, I had to step forward. He stayed in that line until he got to the pit. And he stepped out over the pit of hell and woke up. He followed God until the day he died. After that. Many of you will remember Dreyfus Lewis was an icon of this congregation. He was the lay leader, he was Sunday school teacher, he was song leader. I know, because I was assistant song leader. My little behind would stand up here with him, thinking I was bigger than anything, singing with Uncle Dreyfus in front of the congregation, right there. That's why I love this church so much. We got way ahead of my notes. But that would be a good enough story in itself. That would be a good enough testimony in itself. But we're nowhere near the end of his story. Like I said, he became lay leader of the church. He became circuit court clerk for Sequatchie County, served for 22 years as circuit court clerk. He taught, he's one of the people that taught me the importance of law and justice. He's one of the reasons I spent 40 years of my life in the criminal justice system. In the 1990s, Desert Storm occurred, and I was a member of the military, and I was sent to Desert Storm. I remember when I was getting ready to deploy, Uncle Dreyfus got extremely emotional and said he wished he could take my rifle and leave me here and go in my place. Because he knew what war was. He'd seen it. He'd seen the face of it. When I returned, because God was with me, and I did return, obviously, I'm standing up here in front of you. They had a coming home party for me. And after everything kind of died down, me and Dreyfus and Ronald, his son, who just passed away recently, were standing in my mother's living room, or sitting in my mother's living room. And Dreyfus opened up. He had never talked about his experiences in the war. Now, he had talked about a few little bits and pieces, but never about taking the equipment of the dead soldiers. And I don't think I had ever seen him cry until that day. He told me this story. And this story has affected me so much. Of course, he had already had an effect on my life. And Ronald, I know, sat there in amazement, and he said, Dad, I've known you my whole life. Why have you never told me this story? And Dreyfus said, I can never talk about it until now. And I don't know if it was the kinship that I had been overseas and he had not, but we were already close. He was already one of the most biggest figures in my life. But me and Dreyfus and Ronald were in there for an hour and we were just talking about this. And Dreyfus, after that, shared his story. He made a tape for Carson County for the historical stuff, and he talked more about his experiences after that. Shortly there, sometime in the 90s, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And God showed up again. God helped him put it in remission. And he fought it, and he was fine. And then in about 2006 or 7, he came back, and he came back with a passion. And one of the most incredible things that I remember about Uncle Dreyfus is that he's talking to the doctor, and the doctor is telling him pretty much that it's too far this time, that there's no beating it this time. And he goes, all we can really do is make you comfortable and give you something for the pain. And Aunt Wilma said, he looked at the doctor and said, what pain? And the doctor said, the pain you're suffering from this, and it's just going to get worse. He said, doctor, I don't feel any pain. I'm in no pain. And the doctor said, the doctor goes, I do not know how you are not in pain. And Dreyfus's answer was, you don't know my God.
Amen.
I don't know what effect that had on the doctor. I know what effect it had on me. Dreyfus passed away in 2008. I was in Mississippi at Camp Shelby at annual training. But the greatest honor of my life is the chaplain down there allowed me to come home. And I got to talk to him 2 days before he died on the phone. He could not talk to me, but he did react to what I was saying. They were holding the phone up to him. Then he passed away, and they let me come home. And I got the distinct honor and privilege of handing the flag after they folded it to Aunt Wilma and tell her on behalf of Grateful Nation. And I had it on behalf of Grateful Nation and 2 very grateful nephews, because I know my brother was affected as much by Uncle Dreyfus as I was. So don't tell me that God can't change your life, and that God don't take an interest in your life, and God can't affect something today to save your life or change your life. It can happen. It did happen to Dreyfus. It happened to me. My short little story is I was partying one night with my friends, went to a concert in Chattanooga, and my grandmother started praying the minute I left. I had never in my life voluntarily put on a seatbelt. When I got in the car to come home that night, I put my seatbelt on, and it kept me from getting thrown out of the car that I drove off the side of the mountain. You know, so don't tell me that God can't fix it. You know, Dreyfus always said that life, or he always told me, he said, life's like a job application for heaven. When you are a training program for heaven, when you reach, when God needs you, you'll go. Until then, you're here. Or you fail the interview, and then none of us wants to do that. But on this Memorial Day, remember those who sacrificed. You know, Dreyfus came home. He's not one of those that's on that little memorial down at the courthouse. But he came home when many didn't. And we have the right to stand up here and pledge allegiance to that flag and pledge allegiance to our God because of the sacrifices that those people that have died for us have done. And never forget it. Never forget what we owe those people. And I'm not talking about veterans. That's Veterans Day comes in November. You can thank us then, and I'll appreciate it. Thank those people that gave it all, and gave parts of themselves, gave parts of their sanity, gave parts of their lives, and gave their lives for this country. And, you know, that's what makes this country great. Tomorrow is the most important national holiday that we have. Independence Day, Veterans Day, all of them are good holidays. They are important holidays. Tomorrow is the most sacred national holiday we have. So that is pretty much the story of Dreyfus Thomas Lewis, who is my personal hero. Thank you.